Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I wanted to go over my top 5 problems for Shadowlands, having been an experienced player, a veteran, a commentator, an analyst, a theory crafter, a top performer, competitor. I have a wide variety of opinions and skill sets that I've developed throughout the game, and I wanted to compile a list of things that I think could be very problematic for Shadowlands and to a hyperbolic extent could ruin the expansion for myself personally, and I don't want to see these mistakes repeated moving into it. It's not going to only be negative. I am going to be talking about things that they have done or have said they're going to do to address some of these problems, but I wanted to go over them, and I really wanted to make sure that it happens because these are things that I honestly don't really want to relive, and I think could hold back what otherwise I would consider is going to be an amazing expansion with things like unpruning and class redesign, and just the experience of moving into the Shadowlands and the incorporation of the Scourge from story elements. I think that it has the potential to be this tremendous experience, so I don't want anything holding it back. Moving in at number 5, we are going to have PvE trinkets. Now, if you're a PvE player, you're like, wait, what does that mean? If you're a PvP player, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. This is number 5. It's more of a surface level thing. They have addressed this in posts saying that currently the main goal is to get Shadowlands ready to get out. Totally understandable, makes sense. The core experience needs to be ready to go to release, and these PvE trinkets aren't going to start having their implications in PvP for some time, as I mean, even after the expansion comes out, usually the season hasn't started, the raid isn't even out, you can't even really acquire them. It's going to be a little bit of time, so it makes sense that this is being delayed slightly. But after seeing PvE trinkets play out in Battle for Azeroth, I can tell you that I've seen 2 things. I've seen trinkets that either make it so you never die, or trinkets that make it so you kill someone instantly. These are 2 just not great experiences in PvP, and I would honestly like to not see them repeated. Most of the trinkets that I've seen in Shadowlands Beta are exactly the same trinkets as in BFA, but with different names. You just got Spore Pods 2.0, Zal's Vex, Veiled Eye 2.0, Drestigat 2.0, Lingering Psychic Shell 2.0. They're not any different. There's no real flavor to them. There are either just one trinket that makes you never die, one trinket that makes you kill somebody instantly. And I honestly just don't want to go through that experience anymore in PvP because it's either this toxic one-shotting mechanic where you need to grind this trinket from PvE, with the added bonus of the fact that these trinkets don't even see use in PvE. So as a PvP player, you're like, why do I have to go do something I don't want to do to get a trinket that's going to make my gameplay experience worse, but I need it to be competitive? It's just, and then the trinket's not used in raid. So to me, the trinket only has value in hindering PvP. So I would like to see these trinkets across the board awarded from PvE nerfed by 80% in PvP. They have addressed PvE trinkets by introducing a set bonus to PvP ones, much like in the past, where if you're wearing 2 trinkets awarded from PvP, you're going to get a 20% increase to your versatility, not the defensive part, so you're doing more damage and more healing, which is great to encourage players to participate through a gearing up method in PvP. But the PvE trinkets are so ridiculous, like cheat death or literally kill you instantly, that these need to be dramatically brought down. They have addressed that they're going to do it. I just want to make sure that it's done. There were a couple of PvE trinkets throughout Battle for Azeroth that didn't get nerfed for a while, and it really just dragged those periods of time on for a long time, which is why this was such, even though it's a surface problem and pretty niche, I really don't want to see it happen again. Coming in at number 4, we're going to have lack of catch-up mechanics. Now, this is also something that, again, positively, they have addressed, things like allowing you to skip certain parts of campaign missions to catch up, and hopefully renown catch up. But right now, I'm a bit worried about legendaries, and this is more of a late game thing. Again, this is something I don't think that will be addressed right now. I'm really worried about it not being addressed in the future. Whereas you go into Torghast, you collect currency, you spend the currency on legendaries, and then you can choose to either get a wide selection, go for more options, or choose to upgrade your current option to get more stats out of it. Now, the late game problem with that is if there's no catch up, you are going to feel like you need to get every single character you want to play in this expansion max level doing Torghast every single week. And if you don't, then by the end of the expansion, someone's going to have this many more versatility and haste on their legendary than you, and who knows how high it could ultimately get if they don't put in a catch-up mechanic for it, or a diminishing return cap on upgrading one of your current legendaries very hot hard. So I have like a huge amount of anxiety of like, I need to get everything to max level right away because I'm going to be locked into this position where I can't play any character by the end of the expansion. It's a really negative feeling. It's what happened in Battle for Azeroth, where if you didn't maintain your vision runs and get your mementos and get your sockets and get your corruption all your gear, I don't want that feeling again. I think that catch-up mechanics like in Warlords of Draenor, where you earned conquest and then had an accumulation of conquest over time that you could grind to unlock, so you did the same amount of grinding as everybody else, but you could do it all in one sitting, as opposed to time gating it, dragging it out, making it impossible, not allowing you to catch up at all. And this applies to the current reiteration of the conquest system in Shadowlands. It's a big concern for me. And I understand that, it's an MMO, it's an RPG, you need to grind, but in the past there were catch-up systems to get you back into the game, or a new returning player back into the game, and I think that these are important to have set core in the game. That's my number 4 problem for Shadowlands. Moving in at number 3, endless chore grinding. This is more or less content for content's sake. Gone are the days where, you did your raid, you got your raid done, maybe did some dungeons with your buddies, and then, hey, I'm going to go out in the world, do some world PvP, I'm going to go out and duel, I'm going to go out and do some battlegrounds. I'm just going to have fun and chill and create content for myself. You don't do that. You got your list of chores, you got your job that you need to get done every single week, and if you don't, guess what? You're falling behind. Better keep up, better keep doing these chores. I personally don't like them. I much preferred, okay, got my cap done. What are we going to do for fun? Oh, let's make an alt? Okay, let's make an alt. Let's go do that. Let's have some fun. I think that Battle for Azeroth, it just like, I understand the reasoning for it, wanting to make it so you feel like you're always progressing your character. There's always something you could do of value to your character. It just got to a point where it was like, no, I can't. I got 20 hours I can play this week, and I have to put it all into these activities, and I can't put them into the activities that I used to have fun and enjoy. It just got way too far out of hand. I really don't want that to repeat itself moving into Shadowlands. Whereas right now, from testing it personally in Torghast, the first time you go through Torghast, it took me about 3 hours to complete everything that you would need to get that first set of currency for your legendary, for example. And then I'm told after you've completed it that one time, you'll be able to skip up to that point. So it'll, instead of taking 3 hours, it might take you 30 minutes to an hour a week to do. But if you want to play alts, that starts to add up a lot, right? 30 minutes to an hour on every character, 5 characters, 5 hours a week. And I mean, if WoW is your life and it is your job, yeah, you might have that 5 hours, but then that's 5 hours taking away from progressing on pushing a Mythic Plus key. That's 5 hours taken away from trying to improve your raid parses. That's 5 hours taken away from trying to get better at PvP or some other activity you want to do just for maintenance. I'm a fan of the endless Torghast mode with the cosmetic rewards and super challenging content. I think that's great. But forcing people to do the repeated endless chore part of it, which I think at a point is going to ultimately feel like a vision. You're going to overgear it. You're going to understand the anima powers, and you're just going to roll through it. And it's just going to be 30 minutes to an hour of you rolling through something really easy. And that's what visions ended up being, right? And I don't want that to end up being like that. I think the endless cosmetic reward structure of Torghast is great, and I think that should be the perpetuating content of Torghast for players who enjoy that experience and want to go through it and then be rewarded with something at the end of it. Is this something that I think that is likely to change? Probably not. I think it's set too core within the game itself to change, but I don't want these like stockpiling of things that you need to do throughout the expansion, right? So at the start of it, maybe it's not that big of a deal. It's only one system. But Battle for Azeroth has taught me a lot that they can layer system on system on system, and then then it's like, can't handle this anymore. Take it back. So moving in at number 2, we've got excessive cooldown trading. Now this might be confusing to you again if you're a PvE player, but as a PvP player, PvE trinkets are kind of lumped into this as well. But cooldowns have been released in a plethora in Battle for Azeroth when they introduced essences and things like Vitality Conduit. While these in PvP can be ways to outplay your opponents, where an enemy is trying to engage on you and crowd control you, and you premeditate the attack with a cooldown, that's a great outplay experience. The problem is that they've like tripled down, quadrupled down on that, and now it's like a class has 6 ways to preempt an attack. So it's like At any moment, I think he's going to hit me. Oh, shield. Oh, I think he's going to hit me. Oh, shield. Oh, I think he's going to hit me again. Oh, shield. You just never run out of shield. So while, yes, it is true the best players are outplaying each other and games are extending because they're outplaying each other, there's too many options. There's too many ways out. The PvE trend gets lumped into that. Some of the essences that have been reintroduced is lumped into that. Some of just the toolkits of the classes is at an excessive level where it's like you always have an option when there's a stun. And because you never run out of an option, the other team can never close the game out. So this is something I'm really worried about. And cooldowns in general, since their introduction, in PvE, it's great. You pop this cooldown, you get to pop off, you're top of the meter. Super great experience in PvE. But in PvP, then the classes need to be balanced around that, right? You can't have a class that's like, oh, wow, I'm killing you in 2 seconds. And then outside of their cooldown, oh, I'm still killing you in 2 seconds, right? So you get these big kind of like sine wave graphs where you feel really bad during this time of the game when your cooldown isn't up, and then when it's up here it's really high and the person's dead, and then the other person's like, I can't take this, nothing's happening, we're down here, oh my god, we're dead. And it's just this really big split of brain waves. That was maybe a bad word to describe it, but in PvP it doesn't translate very well. I personally don't like it, and I haven't liked it even since Mists of Pandaria, where we've started to see these cooldowns sort of dive down and jumped on top of each other excessively. So will this be addressed? Probably unlikely. It seems like the class design is pretty much set through, at least for the initial stages of Shadowlands. I'm more worried about if they're looking to kind of repeat their cycle of BFA, where it's like, yeah, you get renown, legendaries, and then this next system of abilities that you're going to get. I really don't want to see any more excessive cooldown trading. This is something where I don't know how they can address it without doing PvP specific changes. Like cooldowns are less effective in PvP, but all of your other abilities are more effective. This way in PvP, the combat always feels engaging, and the cooldown's still relevant, but not the entire thing. I hope that it could be addressed. I think it is a really big problem, especially if you're a new player, because you're going to jump into PvP. You're going to get one shot by something. You might not even know what it was. And then you got to try and figure out what was it. Oh, it was Vendetta, and I needed to use this to stop that from happening. And everything else in between didn't really matter. And I'm just kind of bored of it. I would honestly like to see it changed. It's been like this for a long time. You got like WAD Turbo back in Warlords of Draenor, right? That was kind of the definition of this, where you just trade an Ironbark, trade a Shamanistic Rage over and repeat it until you're deep dampening. It's become a little bit trite, I think is the word, a bit overplayed. I'd like to see a return to Wrath Lich King Cataclysm, where the damage outside of these windows is higher, the damage inside of them was lower. That can only be addressed again with PvP specific tuning, which seems like it's not fitting well in their philosophy. They only want to do it in extreme cases, unlike in Legion, where they were doing it in even the most minute situations. But it is a big problem for me personally, but I don't think that it's ultimately going to be addressed too much. Moving in at number 1, passive healing, passive damage, gushing wounds, echoing void, twilight devastation. These are the things that I'm talking about. Spore pod trinkets. This is just across the game as a whole, passive healing and passive damage. Now in PvE, what is the purpose of it? What does it serve? Well, it helps a player who's inexperienced at their class or who hasn't practiced and doesn't know their rotation to perform like on a more competitive level in terms of output. But it takes away from the gameplay. It takes away from learning your rotation. It takes away from it because you can ignore it, especially when it takes up a larger portion than your class actually does. So I really don't want to see this repeated. And I can see where in like world experience, but I kind of disagree with it, where in the past expansions you had things like Spirit Bond for Hunter, Leech for Demon Hunter, Sustained Healing for Fury Warrior, these mechanics where you're just attacking and healing yourself. And so this is where I disagree with this being a good thing. The Demon Hunter charges in, pulls 20 things, AoEs it all down. Wow, he's a god. I just feel like, don't you ever get to a point where you're like, that's boring? Like you don't need to engage in anything. You healed yourself the whole time. You could go pull to pull to pull to pull to pull to pull to pull, doing the same thing over and over. For me personally, I just get bored of it. You don't have to engage with anything. I like healing to come from a button. not from just me existing or me doing my existing rotation. And the same thing goes for damage, but in PvP, I think they're both problematic. It's just healing extends engagements needlessly, whereas damage can just end it and you don't know why. But this is a big issue. I think it's been a big issue for a long time. I'm much more of a fan of streamlining the healing into execute effects. So a lot of classes have where you kill a monster, your healing ability heals for more now when you press it after killing it. That works great in PvE. It encourages you to try and go mob to mob and kill and keep healing yourself and going, and doesn't leak over too badly into PvP, because usually when you've killed a target, no one's caring that you're doing an excessive amount of healing. The game is already over. The healers get to feel included. I think that this had negative implications in PvE too, where healers are less and less valuable over time as more and more of the classes accumulate passive healing effects. So it devalues healers, obviously, and it creates gameplay that is just non-engaging. The game is playing for you. Sure, when you got 1 or 2 effects like it, that's pretty minor. It's like 2%. The problem is that they stack over time. I mean, in Battle for Azeroth, we just saw like another Ring of Azerite traits added in. In Shadowlands, I'm worried it's going to be like another round of Soulbind tiers, or another round of Endurance conduits, and another round of Finesse conduits that are going to increase your healing on your barriers, make you heal when you blink, make you heal when you charge, make you heal when you Mortal Strike, make you heal when you did. You see the problem, right? Whereas when you started, it wasn't a big deal. But when you layer it on over an entire expansion, you get to this point where it's like, no one's taking damage. Like, nothing's happening. What's going on? And it's because of all these passive effects just layered on top of each other, which in my mind didn't really add anything of substance anyways to the game. If anything, just devalue the game a little bit. But they're there and they get stacked up, and I can see that pattern happening again, potentially, for Shadowlands, based on the structure and comparing Soulbinds to Azerite traits and just drawing parallels and seeing patterns of this. It seems like most of the time when they release something like this, it's like, all right, it's just this. We just wanted to put this in because we needed something to be there, and it was like, yeah, this heals you. And maybe there wasn't a lot of thought to it stacking up over time and being too problematic. But there's also arguments where when Gushing Wounds was high, it's like, well, didn't you want high damage? Not from something that's just automatically happening. I wanted my Mortal Strike when I press it to hit harder, and I wanted my Overpower or my Frostbolt to hit harder, but I didn't want to just like my auto attacks proc this thing that do more damage. It's something that I'm really worried about. It was my number 1 problem in Battle for Azeroth, and it still remains potentially my number 1 problem for Shadowlands, because I can see those things repeated. How can it be dealt with? I don't know. If it needs to be included on the gear because there needs to be something there, and that's just all that they can come up with, or they think is going to be best for that position, then there's not really much that could be done in terms of a solution for it if it ends up being a repeated case. My argument would be focus on healing effects that are from the result of killing a target. Then you get a massive boost of healing, because those encourage you in PvE to kind of string things together and more streamline that experience without leaking over into PvP and without devaluing healers in raid too, right? This is something across the entire game that I hope doesn't repeat. And that's why it's my number 1 for Shadowlands. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it with a thumbs up. Comment down below with what are some of your problems with World of Warcraft, because obviously, you know, I got my own personal set of biases. I'd love to hear different opinions from players that engage in other content in the game. Leave those in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. I'm doing my best to upload daily and keep you up to date with everything that's going on with Shadowlands, so we can all make the correct decision in our gameplay. Check out some of my other videos. I'll have them linked above here. I've got tier lists, class recommendations, class reviews. I'm trying to be a one-stop shop when it comes to Shadowlands. And other than that, thank you again very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.